Everyone thought she'd lost her mind when she proposed to a man living under a bridge. But 10 years later, their names are on the world stage, and the real reason she stopped for him will leave you speechless. The street outside Robon's supermarket was alive with chatter until the midnight blue Bentley rolled to a stop. The sunlight bounced off its polished body, forcing people to shade their eyes. In this dusty corner of town, such a sight was rare enough to silence even the market women. When the driver's door opened, she stepped out. Carolyn Daniels. Her fitted emerald green jumpsuit shimmered as it caught the light. Her heels, black and sharp as blades, tapped against the pavement, each step deliberate, unhurried, and impossible to ignore. Heads turned, whispers rippled, everyone knew her. The billionaire tech visionary, the woman behind CD Innovations, a name whispered with awe in Africa's business circles. Her face had graced magazine covers. Her speeches had drawn standing ovations. But here she was, walking toward a man sitting by a pile of old crates. He was hunched over, arms crossed against his chest, wearing a faded navy jacket over a wrinkled white shirt that had long lost its shine. His jeans were frayed at the knees, his sneakers barely held together by strings. His beard was wild, his hair a tangled mess. Beside him lay a battered gray bag that looked like it had traveled through storms. He looked up slowly, squinting against the sun. His expression was a mix of confusion and disbelief, as if he wasn't sure she was real. Caroline stopped right in front of him. Her perfume, subtle but expensive, drifted in the air between them. "My name is Carolyn," she said softly. He blinked, then cleared his throat. "John. John O'Corey." For a second, they simply looked at each other. Then Caroline's voice lowered, almost as if she was speaking to herself. "I've watched you before. You speak like a man who knows things, about business, about the world. You don't belong out here. I don't know what happened to you, but I believe you just need one more chance." The street fell silent. Then she said it, the words that made a young boy in the crowd drop his bag of oranges. "I know this will sound crazy, but John, will you marry me?" Gasps shot through the air. Is she mad? Who proposes to a man like that? John stared at her, then gave a small, humorless laugh. "If you mean that, go inside, buy a ring, come back, and kneel. Ask me like you mean it." The crowd erupted in murmurs, but Caroline didn't argue. She simply turned, walked into the supermarket, and disappeared behind the glass doors. 5 minutes later, she returned, holding a diamond ring that glittered so brightly some had to look away. And right there on the dusty roadside, in front of strangers with phones raised high, the billionaire in emerald green bent one knee. "John O'Corey," she said, her voice trembling but sure, "will you marry me?" John froze. The crowd leaned in. A bike engine sputtered to a stop. This woman, this stunning woman who had everything, was seeing something in him. Not his dirt, not his brokenness, him. His throat tightened. Slowly, he nodded. "Yes," he whispered. She slid the ring onto his finger. "Now," she said, "get in the car." He hesitated. "I'll stain your seat." "I don't care." He stood, slow, unsteady, like a man rising from the grave, and stepped into the Bentley, leaving behind the only life he'd known for years. The car hummed smoothly as Caroline drove toward Victoria Island. The city glittered ahead like scattered diamonds on black velvet. John sat stiffly, clutching his bag. Hours ago, he was invisible. Now, engaged to the most admired woman in the country. She glanced at him. His eyes were bloodshot, not from tears, but from years of dust, heat, and surviving. She wanted to ask questions, but not yet. First, dignity. "We're making a quick stop," she said. He didn't reply. They pulled up to a sleek building with gold-framed glass doors, King's Grooming Lounge. Inside, the marble floors shone like mirrors, gold-edged mirrors lined the walls, and the air smelled faintly of citrus and cedarwood. A man in a crisp white shirt opened the door, his smile faltering when he saw John. "He's with me," Caroline said simply. That was enough. For the next hour, the barbers clipped, washed, shaved, and scrubbed away the years from his skin. His beard fell in pieces to the floor, his hair trimmed and styled until it looked like it belonged in a magazine. When they gave him the mirror, his breath caught. A sharp jawline, intelligent eyes. He barely recognized himself. A stylist held out a fresh outfit, a charcoal gray suit, crisp white shirt, and polished black shoes. When he stepped out, Caroline's eyes widened. The man who had walked in a shadow was now standing in the light. "That," she said, smiling, "is the man I saw." His voice cracked. "I feel like I just came back to life." "You haven't seen anything yet," she replied. Back in the Bentley, they drove to a massive estate. The gates opened to reveal a white glass mansion framed by palm trees, with a fountain spilling crystal water into the air. "This is your house?" John asked. "No," she said, her lips curling into a small smile. "It's our home now." Inside, the air smelled of vanilla and lavender. African art graced the walls. Crystal chandeliers hung above polished marble floors. A little girl with messy curls appeared at the top of the grand staircase, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy? Who's that?" Caroline opened her arms. "Elena, come here." The girl ran down, hugged her mother, then looked at John with curious eyes. "This is my friend, John. He's going to be spending a lot of time with us." Elena tilted her head. "Are you a good person?" "I'm trying to be," he said softly. "Then you can stay," she said seriously. "But no scary stories at night." For the first time in years, John laughed. That night, Caroline gave him a guest suite that looked like something from a luxury magazine and a plate of steaming jollof rice with fried plantain and grilled chicken. He ate slowly, savoring every bite. Later, they sat on the balcony, wine glasses in hand, the city lights stretching below them like a galaxy. "Tell me who you are, John," she said. He stared at his hands for a long moment. "I was one of the best data scientists in Lagos. I worked with top companies, trained analysts, built systems for banks. I was respected." His voice faltered. "I had a wife, Martha, and 2 kids, Amanda and Jadena. My parents lived with us. Life was perfect. Until one December, he swallowed hard. They were flying to Dubai for a family vacation. I had to work that day, planned to join them the next. But their plane went down. No survivors." Caroline's eyes shimmered. "I lost everything in a single day," he whispered. "I didn't want money. I didn't want friends. I didn't even want to breathe. I left my life behind and never went back." Tears rolled down Caroline's cheeks. "I know that pain," she said. "I lost my parents in a crash, too. And then, my husband vanished when Elena was 2. I searched for years, nothing. I had to accept he was gone." John looked at her in awe. "And you built all this after that?" She nodded. "I had to, for Elena and for me." They sat in silence, the night air cool against their skin. For the first time in years, John didn't just feel alive. He felt hope. The next morning, John woke to a sound he had almost forgotten. Birds singing. Not the rumble of Okada engines under a bridge. Not the stench of gutter water drifting into his nose. Here, sunlight streamed through cream silk curtains, spilling across a room so clean it looked like it had been polished for royalty. The air smelled faintly of warm bread and something sweet, maybe honey. For a long moment he lay still, staring at the ceiling, afraid that if he moved, it might all vanish. But it didn't. The soft bed was real. The smooth walls were real. The faint hum of the air conditioning was real. John sat up slowly. He ran a hand over his freshly trimmed beard, touched the short, clean hair on his head, and a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. A gentle knock broke the silence. "Come in," he said. The door opened a little, and a curly-haired little girl peeked in. "Good morning, Mr. John," she said shyly. "Mommy says breakfast is ready." John smiled. "Good morning, Elena." And, "You can just call me Uncle John." She grinned, nodded, and darted down the hall. John dressed and headed downstairs. Caroline Daniels sat at the dining table in a sleek burgundy suit, her laptop open beside a bowl of mango slices. She glanced up and smiled warmly. "Morning," she said. "Morning," he replied, taking a seat across from her. The table looked like something out of a hotel buffet: steaming eggs, fresh bread, golden papaya, a tall jug of orange juice. "I hope you're hungry," she said, closing her laptop. "It's been a long time since I've seen a meal like this," John admitted. "Then eat up," Caroline said, sipping her tea. "You'll need the energy." John raised an eyebrow. "Why? Are we going somewhere?" Her lips curved in a small, knowing smile. "No, John. You're starting work today." He froze. "Work?" "Yes, I didn't bring you here to sit and watch the days pass. You have too much brilliance for that. CD Innovations needs someone like you." His chest tightened. "Carolyn, I haven't worked in years. I don't even know if I remember how. You were one of the best data scientists in Lagos," she said softly. "That doesn't disappear. You just need someone to remind you who you are." Her confidence shook him. He didn't answer, but deep inside, something long buried began to stir. Hope. That afternoon, John followed Caroline into CD Innovations' glass skyscraper. Inside, the air smelled faintly of new tech and ambition. Chrome surfaces gleamed, screens displayed live data feeds, and staff in crisp, branded shirts moved with purpose. When they saw Carolyn, greetings filled the air. But when their eyes fell on John walking beside her, their expressions shifted. Some smiled politely, others whispered, "Is he her driver?" "No, maybe security." "Then who is he?" Nobody asked directly. Caroline led him to the top floor, where sunlight spilled into a spacious corner office with 3 monitors, walls covered in data charts, and a bold sign on the desk. "Welcome, Mr. Okori, Head of Data Intelligence." John blinked. This is for me?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "From today, you run our data intelligence unit. You report directly to me." He stepped inside like a man entering a memory he thought was gone forever. At first, the work was hard. The software was faster, the tools newer, the algorithms sharper. But his instincts, they never left. Within a week, he was spotting patterns others missed, recommending changes that began saving the company millions. One afternoon, Caroline stepped into his office and dropped a file on his desk. "You just saved us 150 million naira in annual losses," she said. John looked up, stunned. "I was just doing my job." "That's exactly why you're great," she replied. Their eyes held for a moment too long. Something unspoken passed between them. Fragile, but growing. Weeks turned into months. John wasn't just surviving anymore. He was thriving, giving talks at conferences, mentoring young analysts, seeing his name on internal reports that once felt out of reach. And Carolyn? She laughed more, smiled more, spent fewer nights buried in work and more evenings on the balcony with John and Elena, watching the sun fade over Lagos. One night, with rain tapping softly on the glass and the city glowing in the distance, Caroline turned to him. Why did you say yes that day? She asked. John chuckled. Honestly, I thought you were mad. She laughed. But, he continued, there was something in your eyes. I didn't know if it was grace or courage or just hope, but I needed it, and I didn't believe you at first. That's why I made that request at the supermarket. I didn't think you'd kneel, and now? She asked quietly. He looked at her, his voice low. Now, I know you were an angel in disguise. 3 days later, during a quiet rooftop dinner, John stood up suddenly. Caroline looked up, confused. He reached into his pocket, then knelt, the city lights flickering behind him. Elena gasped from the doorway, where she stood with two staff members. John held out a platinum ring. I didn't believe in anything when you found me, but you made me believe again. You gave me life. You gave me love. And now, I want to do this the right way. Caroline Daniels, will you marry me? Tears filled her eyes. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Elena clapped and ran into their arms as John slid the ring onto Caroline's finger. The rooftop filled with laughter and applause. 2 months later, the city of Lagos witnessed a wedding that felt like a fairy tale written in gold. Caroline Daniels and John O'Corey said their vows under a sky lit by fireworks, the ocean breeze carrying the sound of a live orchestra. Dignitaries, celebrities, and tech tycoons flew in from across the globe. Social media exploded with videos of the moment John kissed Carolyn. The billionaire who had once knelt on a dusty roadside for a man the world had dismissed as nothing. But behind the flowers, music, and applause, John's hands trembled as he slipped the ring onto her finger. He told himself it was joy. Deep down, he knew there was more. 3 years later, the world had moved on to new viral stories, but the legend of the roadside proposal still floated around in whispers. Caroline and John rarely spoke of it anymore. They had built an empire together. John was now co-CEO of CD Innovations, the tech giant Caroline had founded, and under their joint leadership, the company had expanded into nearly every major West African market. Their new AI-powered medical diagnostic systems were saving lives and dominating headlines. But the biggest headline of all was happening quietly in their own home. Caroline was pregnant. When she found out, she didn't cry from fear, but from gratitude. Elena, now a vibrant and outspoken 7-year-old, would soon have a sibling. The family that had been broken years ago was being rebuilt, piece by piece. One warm afternoon, Carolyn stood in the kitchen, wearing a simple silk blouse over her growing belly, stirring a pot of agouti soup. The air was rich with the scent of melon seeds and pepper. John entered the room, stopping in the doorway. She caught his gaze and smirked. What? She teased. He walked toward her, slipping his arms around her waist. You just look like the life I thought I'd never have again. She leaned into him. I thought the same. For a moment, the world outside didn't exist. 2 months later, their son, David Ikena, was born. Caroline wept when she first held him. This is the family I prayed for, she whispered, and the family I thought I'd never deserve, John replied, kissing her forehead. Elena threw herself into her role as big sister. She rocked David to sleep, sang to him in the mornings, and even attempted diaper changes, which ended in giggles and one very loud cry from David. The house was alive with laughter again. 5 years later, Elena was walking across the stage at the University of Nigeria, becoming one of the youngest medical graduates in the country at just 18. John and Carolyn sat in the front row, beaming with pride. As she posed for photos in her white coat and stethoscope, a young man in a tailored Navy suit approached her. I'm Damien, he said, smiling. I saw your paper on neural mapping for prosthetics. It was genius. Elena blushed. Thank you. Caroline, watching from a distance, narrowed her eyes just slightly. John chuckled beside her. Relax, he murmured. She's not our little girl forever. The friendship between Elena and Damien grew quickly. It started with late-night calls about science and technology, then coffee dates, then quiet dinners. 3 months later, Damien came to the Daniels mansion with his parents to ask for permission to court Elena, an old-fashioned gesture that impressed both Carolyn and John. Damien wasn't just any young man. He was the son of a respected judge and a rising star in biomedical engineering. 3 years later, on Elena's 21st birthday, Damien proposed under a canopy of fairy lights strung across the garden. She said yes. The wedding was set at Lagos's most prestigious venue, the Echo Convention Center. Gold and ivory filled the space, with live Igbo highlife music weaving through the air. As Elena walked down the aisle, her arm linked with both Carolyn and John, she whispered, "Thank you for everything." At the reception, John gave a speech that silenced the room. Years ago, I slept under a bridge. I had lost my wife, my children, my parents, and myself. I believed life had nothing left for me. But then Carolyn found me. She didn't see a homeless man. She saw a man who still had something to give. And through her, I found love. I found family. I found home. When he finished, the applause was deafening. 9 months later, Elena was in a hospital bed, cradling a newborn baby girl wrapped in soft pink. They named her Amarachi, God's grace. John held her gently, whispering, "You don't know it yet, little one, but you've been born into a miracle." That evening, the entire family, Elena, Damien, Amara, Caroline, John, and little David, now a playful 6-year-old, sat on the balcony, watching the sun dip over Lagos. Caroline exhaled. "I can't believe this is my life." John smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "I can, because everything good starts with belief." That night, they stood together on the rooftop of the new building, the city skyline glittering in the distance. "You know," John said quietly, "I still think about that day you stopped on the street. I still wonder what you saw in me." Caroline's gaze stayed on the stars. "I saw a man who had walked through fire, but whose mind was still sharp. I saw a king in exile." He chuckled softly. "And I thought you were insane." "You weren't wrong," she smiled. "But it worked." They stood in silence until John asked, "Do you regret any of it?" "I regret not finding you sooner," she whispered. "Thank you for watching. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.